East Maryland. And so I went down, jumped in a car, went down and caught on with them. And that's how I got started in professional baseball. And we were part of the Pony League. And
What year was that, Art?
1953. Yeah. Jamestown had a heck of a ball club, just a tremendous ball club. They had Alusick and Witecki and George Sarnan and Walters and Danny Carnavelli was the manager that year, and they were really tough. And my first experience in pro ball, I was a thrower. I guess the only reason I was a pitcher is that I could throw hard, and I really, in my own mind, as I look back on it, I probably should have been an outfielder. I was a pull hitter. I could run pretty good. Had a decent arm. But my pitches, really, you guys that were pitchers here, you know, I had a fastball that was decent. I had a crossfire, and what a crossfire was to me was I stepped to the, I crossed over with my left foot and then fired it against the right-hand batter. It was a good pitch. Left-handers saw it too good and smoked it. But and I had a fair slider. But I remember guys like Tony Lupian and there's a ton of guys in the Yankee organization that worked with me and tried to get me to throw a good change and add some pitches to my repertoire, but it just wasn't to be. I threw it too hard. I couldn't throw a curveball until I was coaching high school ball after my arm was shot. And then all of a sudden the spin became greater than the velocity probably, and it started to bend for me. But getting back to, I did have the good fortune to play ball against Ernie Banks and a lot of other guys, but I remember him because at the time the scuttlebutt was, here's a guy that was going to play in the majors. And you guys played against Paul Owens, and if you remember how Paul used to whack the heck out of the ball on the right side of second base, I mean, if you threw the ball outside Owens, he smoked it. And kind of like Andy and Delicato was another guy that hit it that way. But Banks was playing with a DeVarty team over there, and I heard a lot about him before I had a chance to face him. And this one particular game, I did have a pretty good ball game, and I struck him out once. That's my only claim to fame. I did strike him out once, and he didn't hit any home runs, but I think we played him a 3-game series, and I think in that series he hit 4 out of the park. So he obviously great talent, and it wasn't the thrill for me then as it was later when I realized just really what kind of a ball player was. But I think one of the really nice things, one of the things that I really treasured was that meeting so many just super guys, and you know. In any sport that I ever played, especially in the college and professional level, guys that I'll just remember forever. And I was lucky enough to be a rookie with Bobby Richardson, and you know, there's a guy who epitomized, in my opinion, what professional athletes are all about. Kind of a guy that a young kid could look up to, and he not only had great talent, he had a tremendous personality, and I feel very lucky to have been be friends with a guy like that. After I had that positive experience with Jamestown, they gave me a starting job. I think my first professional game starting was against Hamilton, and we won that game 5-1. And then I beat Bradford. Davenport was down there at the time, and he played, unfortunately, and every time I cocked my arm, he'd drill it over the center field fence or someplace. Had one interesting experience. We were playing up at Hamilton, and I seemed to have Hamilton's number, so I got the assignment up there. And after I was through warming up, I walked up to the mound, see, and I'm looking down there, and geez, this guy that's refereeing home plate looks familiar to me, and it turned out to be a guy I was real good high school buddies with a red-headed kid named Rogers. And I didn't go near him, and he didn't go near me, but I won the ball game, and a call third strike with the bases jammed in the ninth inning.
Who was the umpire? No.
I never had a chance to talk with him after that. He was killed in an airplane accident, and just one of those super guys, and just an incident that I'll always treasure, because it was, you know, any win was a thrill back in those days. But I had a sore arm probably before I was 3/4 through the season, and I attribute that to the fact that I was throwing, and I didn't really do a good job mixing my pitches, or you know, not having the good changeup. I felt like I had to throw it by everybody, and I didn't have Parky's curveball and some other things that I could have done. But anyway, I was in trouble. I remember the first pro game they ever played at Salamanca down at Vets Park. I got a big write-up. Local boy is going to throw, and you know, all the town people were there, Randolph and Cattaraugus and Little Valley and Judas Priest. And I went up there, and I think I lasted about 3 innings. You know, just absolutely shillelagh'd me, and that was kind of the end of my effective throwing right there. But I had a lot of great experiences. I remember one time over at, this wasn't a great experience, but interesting. Hornell had a kid named Billy Weir. 53, those batting helmets were terrible. You know, nobody wanted to wear them. You know, they were, remember those doggone things that went inside your hat, and they just were, they were rinky-dink. So the guys, and it wasn't mandatory. You didn't have to wear them. And this kid went up the plate, and he crowded the plate, see. Jesus, I threw a fastball in there. It hit him. It fractured the supraorbital bone in his eye. But the third baseman fielded the ball.
Oh,
Bam, you know, smoked him. I went down to the hospital to see him the next day or so, and he never played baseball again. But had a lot of great experiences. One time I could run, as I said, I could run decent, so we're playing Jamestown at Olean. Tight ball game. About the 5th or 6th inning, they bring me in to pinch run. And I wasn't out there for 2 seconds, and shortstop made a move, and man, I was cocky, you know, and I jumped off there, and the shortstop slid back out, and I jumped back out, and the second baseman came in, and boom, they nailed me just like that. But I loved it, like all you guys did, I'm sure. Then I picked up again with Cattaraugus for a bit, came down into Casadega, and that's where I got connected with Fulford and Tommy Sharp, and I haven't read these yet, have I? And old Parkey and Ted Wyberneck, and just a super bunch of guys that, in my opinion, had so much talent. And I know that Parkey was one of the guys that had pro experience, and Wyberneck, but there was a bunch of guys down here, in my opinion, always had the ability, but maybe not the occasion, for some reason. And there were guys like Bob and guys like Al Taylor and local guys that really did well. But there's so many great ball players in that inter-city league, and Bob Winterburn, and there's so many that I just can't remember. Georgie Parsons, and who's the guy that left? Wiggly?
Jack Wiggly, yeah.
Great hitters, great ball players. And the nice thing about that was they let me play center field. I didn't have to go near the mound, because they had a ton of pitchers, guys with great ability. Denny Swan, Bruce Bullock, guys like that. And I really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun. Had a heck of a lot of fun. When I got done with the Inter-City League, I finished off with Wally Bulger and Bob Mall and Dale Till and those guys in in the Great Belt League, and that was kind of my swan song with baseball. But then I was at Casadega for 35 years, and I coached baseball, basketball, varsity baseball, varsity basketball, assisted Joe with football, had the track team for a year, did a ton of things that way, got in the girls program finally, had a lot of fun. And I'm still in that, by the way. They let me come back and do my thing. They don't care if we win, lose, or draw. And they think I'm smart, so I keep doing it.
You don't say that.
I enjoy it.
Go ahead and play.
Did you play with Kenny Detlidge?
No, I didn't. Ken was, by the time I got there, Ken was, he was athletic director and teaching history, and really wasn't involved in athletics anymore.
Did his son ever play ball up there? Young Ken? He played
Before I got there.
Before you got
Yeah,
there?
before I got there.
Go on before I got
Yeah. Bob and I played ball against each other in high school. Bob was down at Randolph, and they had a great team in those days. Always tough.
Art, for the purpose of the video here, you played in the New York Penn League 2 years?
Yeah. I actually played 1 year. I went back, and then I dropped out my second year.
Can you tell us a little bit about, maybe in 1953, a little bit about the Jamestown team in particular, and in particular maybe, you mentioned a couple of anecdotes where you had good games against Jamestown, but maybe some of the players you played with in the league, some of the players around the Jamestown team, a little bit about the Hornell team?
Well, Jamestown had a tremendous ball club. I mean, Bob Shaw, I don't think I mentioned that name. He went on to pitch professional or major league ball. But I remember Jamestown had the whole league terrorized. Those guys were stickers right down the line. I mean, they didn't have a weak bat, I don't think, in the lineup. I remember with Tucky especially, because such a fireball back there. Remember how he bounced around, and he really took charge. We had a kid very comparable in the name of Frank Rico. Remember Frank Rico? And he was that same kind of take charge guy. He'd jump out there, and you had to stay awake because he'd fire the ball at you, if he caught you looking at your shoelaces. But George Traken did a heck of a job for Jamestown that year. I'm trying to think of the Irish shortstop. Can't.
Winters.
No, can't think of his name. No.
They had, you talking about that ball club that played with Jamestown. Now, the whole league was it was D, C, V, A, double A at that time.
Yeah.
Then you went to the majors.
Right.
And they'd send guys down here from Class B, and from Hagerstown, they couldn't make the ball club. Because that was in B League. And they'd send them down here to try to strengthen the ball club, and they couldn't make the ball club. They'd send them somewhere else, because the D League down here was better than the B League that they were going. Not because I played, but everybody else will tell you that they had a real good league here. It was the best Class D league in the country.
Well, you are a perfect example of the caliber ball player party that was in that league, and I'll I'll see you after. But Jamestown had a lot of great teams back then. And I can remember as a kid coming down here, and the stands were filled as far as you could look down the right field line, and as far as you could look down the left field line. I was at the end of that era. We experienced something that they don't even understand today in terms of fans' support and the hoopla and the hero worship. That it didn't make any difference if you played D-ball or Major League ball. To a kid, you were really something, and I think that probably inspired a lot of us to give it a shot ourselves. One thing I do remember. I had a no-hit ball game going. I didn't have very many like this, but one day I did have a no-hit ball game going down to Corning, and I managed to walk Tony Lupian every time he came up, and I was getting a little bit cocky, and so the first time he got up to bat in the ninth inning, I threw a strike right down the middle. Holy mackerel, Wally Lance called time! And he came running out the mound. He said, "What are you doing?" And we were winning something like 3-0, see? And I said, "I can get him. I can get him. I know I got it today." He goes, "Let me get it." This guy, he owned me. He's like Davenport. If I cocked my arm, he drilled it right out over somewhere. So, and Frank Rico's out there. He said, "No." He said, "We're going to pick. No, let's get him. Let's get him. I know I can get him." So, I don't know why. They let me have my way. And I'll tell you what, he hit one right up over the top of that scoreboard.
It's still going.
It's still going. But there wasn't anybody on base, and so now we got a 3-1 lead, and I walked the next two batters, and he took me out, and Eddie Andrews came in and finished the ball game for me. But that was typical. And he was typical, I guess, of the guys that had played Major League and were down there working with, the young ball players. Still could hit, still had the everything but the legs. But fun to be around. I wish I could think of more. There's
George Alusic.
Oh man, I'll tell you, he was a stud. He really was. He hit the ball hard. He was a strong, very physical ball player. I don't know, and I don't know what happened to him. I don't know.
He's in the major leagues. I mean, he went up.
Yeah, I just remember that he hit the ball. He hit shots, line drives. Pitchers pitched around him a lot of times. He was
Knock
tough.
him down a couple.
Knock him down.
But I think he won. He was the batting champion that year, I believe.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're right. But Jamestown had just a tremendous team, and Carnavelli was an act all of his own. Remember how he used to walk around out there, and he always wore that turtleneck. He looked the part.
Well, he'll be down here, I think, in a few weeks.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Let you know.
I remember Bobby Richardson was discouraged because he never hit home runs, and I can remember. I was up at Ithaca one day, and he was with Binghamton before he went up to Fort Worth. And when they came through, they played Bucky Freeman and his Ithaca ball club, and I used to go down and throw batting practice with him. I had already had done my thing, and he came over, and we were sitting on the bleachers, and he said his batting coach told him, he said, not to worry about it. He said, with your swing, it's going to happen. And I think that year at Binghamton, he did hit a few home runs. Then we got to Fort Worth. Then he started smacking the ball. And of course, he had a tremendous World Series. But a little guy, but just had that great compact swing. And when I played with him, his best shot was shot over short, shot over second. He was a good hit and run man. He turned a real slick double play. Just typical of the guys that really make it. Unassuming.
Art, I think I talked about you after you told me about Bobby Richardson being his roommate when he came to Casadega. When I got down Long Island, I wrote him. Remember Johnny Frick in Casadega, worked for the station. He was a great Yankee fan. He used to live and die with him. I wrote Bobby Richardson a note, and he said, Art Asquith said no. And by the way, could you get me autographs? I mentioned Johnny Frick. He sent me back a paper with every Mandel Bears, the whole bunch of them. Johnny had that when he died.
Is that right?
Richardson didn't know me from Adam. I just said, I said hello, and by the way, would you get me some autographs? So, ours admired him.
He got he became ill that year, and I didn't see him again until he came back to Binghamton. But he left the ball club at that time. Very religious.
Oh yes.
Quiet. Spoke. Let his bat do his speaking. That kind of a guy.
How about guys on your Hornell team? Did any memories of particular individuals that kind of stand out as superior
Well,
players?
Not, just the Weir kid, I remember, another guy that stands out, remember Ted Stepkowski?
Yep.
Does that ring a bell with you?
Yeah,
Yeah, he was down at Wellsville,
right.
and I think he led the league in home runs in '53, maybe. Fine hitter, but there was a ton of guys like that. But I'll tell you, I think of guys like Paul Owens and man, they were every bit as talented. Just didn't get the chance till almost too late. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't sign till I was 24, and I know that was a negative thing.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. And it held me in good stead for my coaching years. Because every time they'd come in with a troubleshooter, I'd get out, watch what they did with the infielders, and
Right.
picked up all I could.
Right. Filling in for, excuse me.
Go ahead, pardon me, I'm sorry.
Filling in for Russell. Thank you, Arthur. That's just a starter. When we get through with our reading here, we can go ahead and talk some more. Or talk in between, whatever you want to do. Anybody got any questions or anything, don't hesitate to bring them out. You go right at it. This is an open forum, fellas, so have fun.
No, have fun. I'll make copies and send Lucy Arnaz. She'll like this.
Want anything for her? I got a whole bunch of things on
Good
the,
too.
They came?
Get cold.
not on the game, but on the, when she came in on that.
Sure, she
I got a whole envelope of it.
do you? She'd love that. She's a real historian.
That you had on that paper?
You said
know,
everything, Art,
I-
except if I hadn't have quit, you'd never gotten a job.
That's right.
Still be on the way.
I was,
You'd be tired on the Rock City Hotel.
Now it comes out.
I was working.
On the Rock City Hotel now.
I was working on my master's out at Ithaca, and I was working part-time at Lansing. And the principal there, name was Clark Carnell, and he and J. Arthur France, who was the Superintendent Casadega, were real good friends. They were on a board of some kind together, principal's board or something, yeah. And Art France said, "I'm losing a good man, a really good man, and I'm going to have a tough time replacing him. Who do you think, you know anybody?" And he's the guy who recommended me. Clark Carnell was the guy that sent J.A. my name.
Oh, 'cause I remember you calling me, and me talking to you.
You talk about walking into a lion's den. Geez, all I hear when I come down here is Bob Wade this, Bob Wade that. But he was a member of the local Lions Club. Geez, he went blah, 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 blah.
You last, that only lasted 2 years, you lasted 37.
Yeah, that's right.
I can tell you something.
We didn't know who the guy
The
was.
guy who was really interesting, though, was Gordie Howe. I wasn't really into hockey. So unfortunately, I didn't really know a lot about his background. I knew who he was. I'll tell you what, the guy had a road map on his face, and he had a set of hands on him, like a grizzly bear. Oh, Lord. But so interesting and so soft-spoken. I could just sense the animal in that guy,
Big guy, though.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. He's like a tight end. I think the story about Paul Owens is did you ever talk to Paul about, you talk a guy who, a quirk of fate, really, time had passed him by. He was just in charge of the Salamanca Recreation Program, playing pickup ball, playing basketball with the town team and all that kind of thing. Then he got that job at Panama. And while he was at Panama, he got a phone call or a letter offering him a scouting job for the Phillies.
Then he lined
And he told me he and his wife agonized over that because they offered him a $3,000 contract, $3,200 or something, 34 or 38 at Panama for the AD's job. And he's saying, here's a job I can count on, and I know what my bucks are going to be. And here's a take a chance thing and something I've always wanted to do. And he took a chance.